You know, ice fishing is a great way to stay active during the winter months. But like all activities in the great outdoors, it doesn't come without its risks. So here are 10 tips that are sure to keep you safer on the ice. In preparing for your ice fishing trip, make sure you understand the water that you're going to be fishing. Take a quick look at a map and know where the inlets and outlets to that body of water are. Moving water is a form of convection, effectively warming the ice. This creates thin spots in the ice, and it can be dangerous to fish near these areas. Underwater springs are another natural feature that can introduce warm water into the lake and create thin spots in the ice. Next tip is to make sure that somebody knows where you're going. It's important that even if you're traveling with a group of people, things can happen to the group. It's a high-risk venture out there on the ice, and it's important to make sure that somebody who's not going fishing with you knows where you were going, what body of water you want to fish, so that in the event that you're not heard from, somebody else outside of your group can call for help. So the next tip is to make sure that you're dressed appropriately. This means having a good set of bibs, a winter jacket, hat, gloves, and a good pair of winter boots. So the next tip, which no pun intended goes hand in hand with dressing appropriately, is to keep an extra set of hand warmers on you at all times. It can creep up on you out there how cold it's getting, and oftentimes, despite the fact that you might have some nice thick gloves on, there are times when you got to take your hands out of those gloves to work with something just for dexterity purposes. And especially if you're, touching metal or you get your hands wet, frostbite can creep in much faster than you think. So having an extra set of warmers out there with you will help prevent that and make your day more comfortable and enjoyable. So the next tip here is to just drill a test hole after taking a few steps out into the ice. This will just help give you an initial indication of what the conditions are like, and to kind of confirm if you already have a thought on how thick the ice is. It'll just help confirm that. You can also get a peek at what the quality of the ice looks like to make sure that it's nice and clear. Clear ice is strong ice, and so ideally you'd have a few inches of nice clear ice. The next tip is to make sure that you have a good pair of cleats with you, if not wearing them on the way out. Sometimes, the walk out can be great, but if you get out there on a warmer day and it's above freezing, the air temperature can melt that surface layer of ice and cause it to be very slippery and make for a really rough walk on the way back in. And it can be dangerous. I've watched plenty of people slip out there thinking they had a good grip on the ice, and watch one person whack their head pretty hard. So just having a pair that you can strap on if needed will really help save the day. Next tip is to make sure you use a spud, have a spud with you, and make sure that you're poking that ice on the way out, especially if it's your first trip out of the year or if you're going out into an area that's not been traversed by other people. But even if you are going to an area where you've been fishing and you're confident that it's safe, unless that path is pretty well worn and you can see obvious signs that someone just traversed it, it's always best to have that spud out in front of you, poking that ice every few steps, just to make sure that there's not an unexpected hole. Maybe some fishermen, cleared out a hole for a spearing pike and snow's blown back over it. You can't see it. And some guys don't do a very good job of marking those types of holes when they leave them open. Never hurts to have a spud and check that ice every few steps. Before we go on, please remember to hit that like button, ring that bell to be notified of our future videos, and consider subscribing to our channel. These 3 things really help support the channel. Thanks. For those who don't know what a pressure crack is, they tend to be more prevalent on very large bodies of water, but as ice expands and contracts over time, they'll develop cracks. I think most of us are familiar with that. You see those even on the smaller lakes. But on the larger lakes, those chunks of ice that are expanding and contracting are large enough, and there's enough pressure there, and there's enough movement of that ice that you can actually open up a bit of a gap between chunks of ice. And especially if the large lake is not completely frozen over, some of those chunks can break off, and you end up on a big giant floating iceberg of sorts, and it's not a place you want to be. It's possible, and there's been plenty of cases where guys will get across these pressure cracks and they'll fish all day not realizing that the chunk of ice that they're on has actually separated quite a bit. And at that point, usually your only choice is to call for help and hopefully get the Coast Guard or someone else out there to rescue you. Can't stress enough how important it is to have a set of Ice Awls with you. If you're walking out on that ice and you do fall through, it may be the only thing that saves you. It's best to have them somewhere that's readily accessible, whether it's just wearing them around your neck or maybe attaching it somewhere to the upper part of your coat. Somewhere where you can reach and grab it quickly if you end up falling through. You're going to want to have a pair with you in the event that the worst happens. And the best tip that I think anyone can give someone with regards to ice safety is to not go by yourself. If one person falls in, It's always best to have someone else that can help you. You know, even if you're going to an area with other people, there's no guarantee they're going to stick around. And it's best if you have someone who's with you and plans to be with you the entire time you're out there. So in the event that one or the other of you gets into trouble, there's someone there that can help rescue you and help get you out of there.